Welcome to Kimberly Ann Crafts. Today we're binding a quilt with mitred corners. I've used ribbon for binding my quilt. I find it's brilliant because it's sealed at both edges, but you can make your own binding. Sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down one edge of your ribbon. It'll become obvious why later on. I've used a long stitch and low tension. I also pulled the ribbon to keep it taut. Now you iron your ribbon, fold over where you've just sewn, and then have the ribbon in half, so obviously there's a gap showing where you folded down your seam allowance. Now you position your edging onto your quilt and decide how much you want to cut away. Cut away the excess and hopefully you'll have loads of excess fabric to make pillows or matching accessories. Now sew onto the right side of your fabric on the unsewn section. Now I've made this corner here to show you what I do. You line it up with the next edge, fold it back over, and then you want to feel for where the corner is or where the diagonal line is. You want to start sewing after that. So I put a pin in to show me where that edge is underneath. You have to feel for that. And another one to keep it straight. And start sewing all the way down the next edge. When it comes to the end, I just do a very simple join. I line them both up, making sure the ends are out the way, and I pin them in place so that it's extra neat. Then just over sew and trim the ends. Now we're going to hand sew the back. Hand sewing is the only way it's going to be extra neat. If you want to spend a long time quilting and patchworking and then no time at all binding, then your quilt's just going to look unfinished. You need to hand sew the back. And what I do is I join the stitches of the seam we made on the ribbon and then the seam from sewing it onto the quilt. Used a short tapestry needle so that it doesn't pierce the fabric. Now I just put a knot in just inside the seam line so that it won't show. So I'll show you what I mean by the sewing the seams together in this photograph here. And then what happens is the seam will close up behind you as you sew and create a really nice finish. And because you've already ironed it, you won't need to go and iron it afterwards, which might ruin it. When you get to the corner, sew all the way up to the corner of the sewn edges or edge line, but don't go beyond that. So you're leaving this section here. And then you just line up the next edge and carry on sewing for about 1.5 inches. Tie a knot to secure off the thread, then feed the thread up to the corner. I'm then going to secure the corner with some tiny little invisible stitches. You can do tiny little stitches that you can see, and that will result in a neater corner, but I want to have a little bit more of a relaxed corner and keep my stitches invisible just because of the nature of this ribbon. The stitches would show up quite drastically. So you neaten the corner with your fingers, and then just essentially a running stitch joining the two layers, but try to keep the stitches just behind where that seam will show. So just inside the fold on the top layer, and then a little bit further along just inside the bottom layer. Feed the needle back through and then continue stitching. And that's your mitred corner.